Hi guys, and welcome to my little 9K celebration here on YouTube, celebrating 9,000 subscribers, which happened at the start of this month, and I'm just so grateful and thank you to every single one of you. And so for the next 9 hours I'm going to be uploading one video every hour. There's all sorts of tutorials, process videos, there's a haul, a giveaway, and I'm going to end with a live stream, so stick around for that at the end. But to start off with, I asked you here on YouTube and over on Instagram for any questions you'd like answered, so we're going to kick things off with a little Q&A. So the first question came from Paper Button Love, and it was my first craft love: scrapbooking, card making, stamping, probably none of the above. I've always been a totally crafty person, even as a child, so I had a lot of craft loves before I discovered scrapbooking. Sewing, obviously illustration and design, which is what I made my career out of, but I think probably what got me into scrapbooking was art journaling. I discovered Rachel Denbauer and did her art journaling classes, and through that found the what's it called, Red Velvet Art Kits, and that's when I sort of properly started scrapbooking. I definitely did a lot of card making in there as well. I've always done all sorts of crafty endeavors, but scrapbooking and project lifing and traveler's notebooks have definitely been my longest love, that's for sure. So Chantel and the Crafty Mole both asked pretty similar questions. How did you get started and how long have you been scrapbooking? A really long time. When I was probably 15 or 16, our town got its first scrapbooking store, and I'd never seen anything like it. It was my crafty heaven, just filled with pretty papers and brads. I remember brads being a big thing for me. Lots of those sorts of things, and this is well back in time before the internet for me. So we got Sky TV, and on Sky TV there was a show called The Carol Duval Show, which again was like my sort of heaven because it was just filled with all sorts of crafty things, and that was probably my first introduction to what scrapbooking was. I hadn't really seen anything like that before, so watching that show and buying a few bits and pieces from that store, that's what got me started in scrapbooking. And I still cringe at some of those earlier layouts, but you know, it's like any hobby, any new interest grows from there, and I've never really lost my interest in scrapbooking. I am a designer by trade, although we'll get onto that in a second, but obviously I love making things, and I love making things with my hands, and scrapbooking has always been that for me. So that's how I got started. And as for how long it was, well, that was when I was, like I said, 15 or 16, and I am 38 now, so that is a long time, a long time. Katie Kate Ellen asked, is crafting your full-time job? No, it is not. Definitely not. And Ali Rossiter asks, what is it that you do for work? I think that you work from home, but not too sure doing what. Yes, I work from home. I am a contract designer for an educational publisher here in New Zealand, and so I work sort of 40-45 hours a week from home doing that, and so crafting is definitely not a full-time job. It is a hobby that I fit in around my work. I'm really lucky that I do work from home, so I can film or craft during my breaks. I can set my own schedule essentially, which is, I know I am very lucky to be able to do that, but most of my crafting happens in the weekends, so I guess it's a full-time, part-time job. I don't really think of it like a job though. It's what I do for fun, or I wouldn't do it. The second question that Ellie asked in here is, what's your pet hate when crafting? And when I thought about it, I thought, what's my pet hate when crafting? My pet hate when filming is when I start filming and then Shane comes in and starts talking and distracting me. That's my pet hate when filming. But my pet hate for crafting, and probably comes as no surprise, is alpha stamps or alpha sets that don't have numerals in them, and E's. Why are there never enough E's? There's always like 2 X's, Q's, Z's, but like 3 E's. E is definitely the most used letter of the English alphabet, so I never understand why there's only like 3 E's in a set. When sets come with a million E's, that always makes me totally happy. I think I've probably answered Tracy's question, how do you fit craft in with work? I fit craft in where I can. For me, it's kind of like a therapy, so I have to craft all the time or I just don't feel like myself. I love making things. I always have ideas popping into my head, and so I don't feel good if I don't action those sorts of things. So like I said, I'm really lucky that I set my own schedule, which means that I can craft in my breaks, or I often craft early in the morning before I start work. I'm not a night owl, so I'm definitely not up late at night crafting. I'm normally half like a zombie by about 8:30 at night, so there's definitely not a lot of crafting that goes on at night. You've probably seen videos where I have filmed at night and it's always a disaster, so I don't craft at night. Early mornings are my favorite time for crafting, and all of my crafting gets done in the weekend around whatever else it is that we have to do. But I fit it in wherever I can because it's super important to me. It's a really big part of my mental health journey, and I make sure that I make time for it. Probably exclusively over other things that I should be doing, housework, chores, fitness, that sort of thing, which I know isn't great, but it's my love and I make time for it. Cranberry Cat wants to know, what would my dream job be? Assuming something crafty design, but very interested to know something more specific. I mean, dream job, realistically, my dream job, I would love to be able to do my crafty thing full time. That would be great, but probably my dream job, I once saw a job position for like panda keepers. That would be my dream job. Playing with pandas all day, probably anything animal related if I'm realistic, but playing with pandas, looking after baby pandas, that would be great. Caroline Hendricks asked, where do you find ideas and inspiration for crafting? And Chantel had asked the same thing. Where do you get your inspiration from? Everywhere. Inspiration is everywhere. Lots of times I'm inspired by things I've already done as I'm working on something. I have another idea. Instagram is a huge place of inspiration. There are so many amazing crafty people on there, and I love following all sorts of different crafts. I don't necessarily do all of those things, but they always sort of pop an idea into my head. I'm a real crafter that's like inspired by product. It's definitely not necessarily a photo or a story that will inspire a layout, but for me it's the playing with the product. I love trying new techniques and trying to adapt things that I've already seen, so I'm definitely product first and then sort of story photo, which I know isn't the case for a lot of people, but I have a lot of product. I'm really lucky. I have a lot of product to work with, and so it is always product first predominantly. Brenda wants to know how an idea is formed and follow through to the reality of what you visualized. It's a really hard question to answer because that's totally dependent on what project that I'm working on. We've all seen the videos that I do where it is nothing like how I thought it would be when I start out. My process normally involves having an idea, and I do tend to sketch out the ideas I have, because even when I'm working on my design work, my job, I can get ideas for things that I want to try, but that's not necessarily, I can't just stop what I'm doing and then start working on my craft. So I've always got little bits of paper, notepads. I always have grand ideas for having like a notebook that I fill with all of that sort of stuff, but it never happens. It's always little scrappy bits of paper that I just sketch out a little sketch, just enough for the idea to sort of formulate in my head and sort of capture that before I can actually sit down at my craft desk. So I think sketching out ideas, or at least writing ideas down, helps me to decide how something's going to look, and then I will go to my product and decide what sort of color scheme or products that I'm going to be working with. I mean, often it's design team work, so I'm limited to the kit that I'm working with, which I find really helpful. Limiting choices always makes it so much easier for me to craft. Literally, if I had to start every product with my entire craft room full of product, it would take me a really long time. The less choices I have, the better, which is why I really enjoy working with kits. And yeah, so each project is kind of just different, and turns out how it turns out. Sometimes it's exactly how I wanted it, and sometimes it's nothing how I wanted it. Sometimes that's even better than my original idea, and sometimes it's not, and that's just how it is. Each layout, each project, I learn something new, I try something new. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and then I know how to do it better next time. Heidi asked, what is your favorite way to memory keep traveler's notebook, pocket pages, etc., and why? And some good organizational tips. I don't have a favorite. I love everything I do. If I don't love something, I don't do it. It's that simple. I love working in my traveler's notebooks, my pocket page notebooks. I still love Project Life. I love how easy pocket pages are to work with. And lately I've been loving being back into sort of 12 by 12 traditional layouts as well. And I guess the other thing, it's not really memory keeping or documenting, but I've been loving the sort of happy mail, more sort of fun crafting things too. Love sharing my supplies and ideas with other people, so that has been fun as well. Like I said, I love all of them. I wouldn't do them if they weren't enjoyable to me, because it is just, this is it's a hobby. I don't do things that I don't want to do. So I don't worry about keeping up with documenting. Filming Project Life for you guys is excellent. That's my #1 tip for keeping up with Project Life, is to have some sort of accountability. Having to put a Project Life video up for you guys every week keeps me accountable for Project Life, so I am almost exclusively completely up to date with that all the time. And as far as other documenting goes, I don't put that guilt onto myself if I'm not caught up. There are about 1,000,001 photos of Jack that I've taken or Tracy's taken and sent me, and I wouldn't even say I've done 1% of those, but I'm not crying about it. I'm not worried about it. I'll document the photos that I document, and the other ones will just sit on a computer, and I'm totally okay with that. So I think there's too much guilt in craft. That's what I found in documenting. Way too much guilt about what you are and aren't getting done. Just do what you can. It's supposed to be fun, and I don't think anyone's going to cry if you didn't have every single week of your life documented on Project Life. So the reality is if I need to skip a week for Project Life because something terrible happened, I probably will. I have before. I've stuck a huge photo in and called it done. There are definitely weeks where I don't take many photos, and I put those in and it's just done. So try to eliminate the guilt would be one thing, I think, because everything else should just be your favorite. Everything you do should be your favorite thing to do. So that's my favorite. Tracy also asked, how do you choose what project to work on? Well, YouTube. I've got a pretty tight YouTube schedule, so I know what I need to get done to put up for you guys, so that dictates a lot of what I'm working on. I also am on 4 design teams, so there are deadlines and schedules for those as well, which also dictates what I'm working on. So having those sketches and ideas written down does make that handy, because when I need to do a traveler's notebook layout, for instance, I've got that little pile of things that I've wanted to do, and I can pick one of those to do. Same for Project Life. I know I have to do that every week, so I'm always sitting down to do a Project Life every weekend. And apart from that, if I don't have anything necessarily that I specifically want to do, then I just pick something that is sitting there ready to go. I do tend to batch organize, so if I'm sitting down to print photos for Project Life, I will print more than 1 week at a time. Same for my traveler's notebooks or layouts. If I'm printing photos, I will print a bunch of photos, so there's always photos ready to go. Nothing worse than wanting to sit down to do something crafty and instead than having to sit and edit and print photos. So I've always got a pile of things ready to go, and I just pick one of those and start. The Crafty Mole, I think she means how long does it take me to do a Project Life. That kind of varies. I don't spend a long time doing Project Life, so anywhere between maybe 30 minutes to an hour. When I edit those videos down, I'm trying to keep them to 10 to 15 minutes for you guys, but probably, yeah, I would say 20 minutes to an hour. I don't think I've ever spent longer than an hour doing Project Life. If I have, then something's gone really wrong and I've run out of ideas, or something hasn't worked and it's taking me longer than I expected. But I would say on average maybe 30 minutes for a Project Life page. Tinkercat wanted to know, are there crafting things that you cannot do anything with or that you don't like? There's definitely things that I don't like. Not a big fan of doilies. She said ribbons, buttons, special papers, certain colors. Don't love green, don't love orange, don't love doilies. There's lots of things that I don't like. Working on a design team has really helped me to be able to push those sort of boundaries out. Like sometimes you get a kit and it's just not your thing. Maybe the colors are not you. I know being in the southern hemisphere and working for northern hemisphere kit companies, often the seasons don't work. So we're sort of spring summer here at the moment, and a lot of the kits have been autumny themed. You just kind of have to learn to work with it. It's an opportunity to try and alter things and to just push your boundaries a little bit. Like I say, I'm not a fan of orange, but then I got that heritage collection and I went on that trip to Christchurch to see Jack, and so lots of my photos were kind of orangey colored, and I've managed to work that into a couple of layouts. So as much as I don't like things, it's really easy to say, oh, I hate using this. It's different to try and put it into a different perspective and say it's a challenge to use this and I'm gonna try and make it work for me. So as much as I would prefer every layout, every pocket page to be like teal and pink, that doesn't always happen, and I think it's good to be able to step out of your comfort zone a little bit like that too. Nadine asked, what's your best and worst crafty purchase ever? And it's so hard. My most expensive crafty purchase was probably my Cameo, and I can't call it my worst purchase because I really love using it. I think my worst purchases are things that I spend money on and then don't use. I had a real struggle to find a paper trimmer that I liked, so I've got like 4 paper trimmers sitting there that I don't really use. That's always annoying. I do really try hard to use everything that I buy, so my best crafty purchase, oh, you've really stumped me with this one. There's so many things that I love, it's so hard to pick a favorite. My best crafty purchase might have been my very first pocket page notebook, because it opened up a whole new form of crafting for me. So there's one. Loved my pocket page notebook, and yeah, that just started a love affair. Let's call that my best. There's lots of things I love, obviously. Stamps, I think things that you can reuse again and again, they're always the best purchase. Things like stamps, metal dies if you use those things, tools that you get a lot of use out of, adaptable sort of tools. Always handy, I think, to have a computer and a printer that you know how to use. I think the worst purchases are things that you purchase and then never use because you don't know how, or you're afraid, or they just don't work for you. And the best purchases are things that you use again and again and again. Marley asked, what do you do with small scraps or scrapbooking supplies that are not you? Small scraps, I keep everything basically. I have a real hoarding problem, which is why my room is like chock full of stuff. I keep any sort of scrap that I think I can use or die cut something out of. I keep in a little scrap bin, and I do use those really often. As for scrapbooking supplies that I don't love, they aren't me, I put all of those in a box, and I'm often giving them away to friends, or to the local school, or giveaways for you guys. We've got such a huge community and we all have such varied tastes that something that isn't quite your style is always somebody else's, so I'm always happy to give my non-used crafty supplies away. So I don't tend to throw really anything out because there's always someone else who might want it. Jessica asked, from one coffee lover to another, how do you take your coffee? I take my coffee with milk. That's it, just milk. Love a latte. Latte's my favorite. With all the coffee issues that I had last year, I try to keep it down to a single shot, but I am back up to 3 coffees a day, so I guess that evens out. And she says, do you ever get burned out with scrapbooking? If so, what do you do to get mojo back? And I Love Illy Studio said, are you ever tired of scrapbooking and or want to explore other hobbies? Yeah, I get burned out with scrapbooking. Everybody does. How do I get my mojo back? I just keep going. I think sometimes it's like creativity is seen as this like magical thing that you either have or you don't have, and I don't believe that that's true at all. It's the same in my actual job, design work. Some days you just, oh, the last thing you want to do, but it's my job. I have to keep going. I have to be creative. And I sort of have the same attitude when it comes to crafting. Just keep making is my advice. Keep doing what you're doing, and eventually it sort of comes back to you. Creativity is like a muscle memory. You have to use it to have it. So if you want to take a little break, then take a little break. But I think when you take a little break, you can't expect to come back and be like, boom, straight back into it. You have to be able to ease back into creativity. And the way you do that is by making things. So try a different hobby, try something else, try a different style, scrap lift somebody else is always helpful. Use a sketch challenge, create a little kit for yourself. Find giving yourself parameters helps to get some of that fun back into your life. And I think that's the thing, is like, you got to try to enjoy it. That's what helps creativity. But it's one of those things that the more you create, the more creative you'll be. So yes, I do lose my mojo all the time, but it's the same thing. I've got design team assignments. They have to get done whether I'm feeling creative or not. So sometimes just carrying on through it will help bring that mojo back. And as for, do I want to explore other hobbies? Yeah, all the time. And I do. I never limit myself. If I want to try something new, then I will try something new. Even if it's not something I love, I just about always will pick up some sort of technique or product or something that I can use in other ways. So I think it's also a good idea to try other things because it helps sort of break you out of your maybe style rush or just that habit you get into of doing the same thing again and again because you know that it works. So if you're getting a bit bored or you've lost your mojo, trying something new can be really helpful just to spark new ideas. I also find that if I have lost my mojo, or even not even in like that sort of larger sense, but say I've been crafting all afternoon and something isn't quite working out the way I wanted it to, it always pays to just do something different, switch your brain onto a different track. So my go-to is probably to take Lil for a walk because getting outside, the fresh air, the movement, the exercise, it just helps those sort of brainwaves get back in alignment, I think, and I always feel better and better able to craft after things like that. But yeah, I love trying new hobbies. It's again another reason why this room is so full of stuff, because I've done all sorts of things. I've done Like I said, art journaling, I've done bookmaking, I've done illustration, I was into crocheting for a while, sewing, toy making, what else have I done? Printmaking. Now, and this YouTube was another one of those things. I wanted to try filmmaking, so I wanted to try videoing and editing and all of that sort of thing. So yeah, if I didn't try new hobbies, we wouldn't be watching this now. Tracy asks, what's your fave place to buy supplies? I'll be honest, I get most of my supplies from scrapbook.com. If I'm buying immediately, I end up usually at Spotlight. I don't have a lot of choice here in Dunedin, so if I need to buy something immediately, Spotlight or the Warehouse and Warehouse Stationery are my go-tos here in New Zealand. I've bought a few things from Crafter's Cart. They've been really good to deal with, but mostly I like having things immediately. That's one of my weaknesses. I got terrible FOMO. When I see a new collection released, I want it now, which means I generally have to buy it from scrapbook.com, and I just have to pay the international shipping and the exchange rate. It probably works out to I still think it probably works out cheaper than buying it here locally, and I don't have to wait the 3 to 6 months that it takes for things to become available here. So scrapbook.com is where I get most of my supplies. And the other place is it's a bit of a bummer actually. The other brand that I really like here in New Zealand is Rosie Studios. However, I can't buy their supplies from Rosie Studios. I have to wait for it to appear at Warehouse Stationery. But that's another brand that I really love. And if you're not in New Zealand like me, then you can buy that from their website directly. AB Crafty said, very random, where do you get the We Are Memory Keeper sequin stickers from? I get them from my stash. They've been in my stash. I think Michelle from the Stamp Spot sent them to me a good long while ago. I don't believe that they're available anymore. I might be wrong. If I am, I'll link them down below, but just from my stash. You can totally make your own sequin stickers with sequins and a glue dot. That's literally all those sequin stickers are. So if you've got a spare afternoon and a bunch of sequins, sit down, grab yourself a old backing sheet, some glue dots, and make your own. But I'm afraid I don't believe that they are available any longer. And last up, X Purple Daisy 77 says, would love to see your finished albums, traveler's notebooks lined up on a shelf. Well, here's my albums. This is my albums here. So all my Project Life albums from 2014 through to 2019 now. These are all of my December dailies, including my new album for this year. I've got my scrapbook layouts in here, and this is my album for Jack. And down here you can't see all my very, very old scrapbook albums. And then over here, I keep all my traveler's notebooks and their covers up here on these shelves above my desk. I also have my Life Crafted albums and my planners. And this box here is full of finished inserts that have not been put into covers yet because I've run out of covers. So you can see, I think I'm going to have to do another shelf, guys, because that one is pretty full. So that's it. Hopefully that answered all your questions. I'm always around in the comments, guys, so if you've got any questions, just ask them in the comments on the video. So I'm happy to answer them if I can. Otherwise, that's it. That's it for me. I will see you again really soon. Don't forget to keep checking in throughout the day for all the new videos. And I will hopefully see you for the live stream later this afternoon. Bye, guys.